all natural. Some kind of little cartoon up on the top. Driving through these towns, I sometimes see something I don't have time to video. I've seen a couple of churches that were all done in wood, and one whose facade was done with design all in wood. So whatever it is, the grain is what it looks like.
E singurul Mercedes pe care l-aveți de armată sau ce puțin așa arată.
Unii oameni însemna altfel a și fost aici. Și pur și simplu acum la expunem să vadă și lumea același.
This is my hostel room, a 4-bedroom that I share with a Brit. I have not met yet. It was newly built, this portion of Grandma's house, and the young granddaughter, and I had dinner together downstairs, and nice conversation. But this is nicely done, and it's on the long lot that looks like it would have been part of a farmstead. There's a balcony outside here. So as I begin my first walkabout from my hostel, which is where that man is coming from, on to his left about right now, past the Luck Oil, and I begin walking my way back down towards the center of town. I came in one street over to the left after turning right off of a long street going down to the railroad station and the bus station. Town of Marmației. I think I've got that one actually pronounced correctly. So my hostel behind me, and to the left down there is the railroad and the train station, and here I am walking into town with this big church here to the left to mark this intersection. I'll just telephoto down to the end of the street since I can at this point. Just walk down there. There should be ice cream. In the next block, a large administrative building and another big church, but a different kind, I believe, but I'm not sure. Now it's down to what I think is probably the center square of town with another big church and the Museum of History and Archaeology, and this is a little park, so we'll walk through that in a few minutes. A couple more churches further. Looks like there's supposed to be some kind of a concert here tonight. The end of the park. Hopefully the rain, which has just come through, will abate for the rest of the evening. Looks inviting, doesn't it? Except for what I'm sure is the dangerous dog inside there waiting for you. Apparently this is not a church, but I don't know what it is if it's not. Notice the 4 little mini towers on each of the 4 towers, historically indicating right to administer the death penalty. It's interesting that they fly the Romanian flag right alongside and with frequently the European EU flag. I keep remarking on what's nice about Romania in comparison to Moldova is that people look right at you, look you right in the eye, and if you nod your head, they nod and smile and you say something. I wonder when the heyday was that created these buildings new. I think by walking down that side of the street I missed some pretty architecture, like that interesting building there with a large balcony. That's novel. I haven't seen that at all anywhere. And this is the primary municipality. I guess probably the local government office. Too bad all that metal work has been allowed to rust out. So it looks like to the right, 250 meters, is a memorial to the victims of communism and the resistance. Here, a small little parklet, we'll call it. Here, a pedestrian street. I don't know what its importance is, if any, other than it leads to that victims memorial. We're looking at a very large map of the area, and this is where we're at right now. This town here of Sighetu Marmației. And across that blue line is the Ukraine. And presumably I can just cross the bridge there. I don't need a visa, so I should be allowed to do that. I might test that, just to kind of pre-test taking a train through it if I can, or to go to Bardejov, Slovakia. Tomorrow what I'll go is take a bus up to Sapanta, right in the upper left-hand corner, to see the painted gravestones. Here, another church. This one just opposite that little park that we just looked at. Here, a little bit of painting on the outside. Notice it lacks those three arches that we've often seen, richly painted. I'm just curious about that icon up on top there. It looks like either an acorn or a beehive. This was probably a pretty building in its youth. Unfortunately, crapped up and modernized and then neglected since. Here we transit to the more modern part of town, I think, and this roundabout. Now just scoot to this corner and hang a left and go back up on the street, one down towards the train station from the street we just walked up, which should take me by the park. And if I can get a bottle of soda. Here, looking back up in that direction, here we came, but on a different street, that church, the little parklet, and then the building up there that looks like it ought to be a church. And I swear that's a cross right at the top of that pointy. Yeah, it's pretty sure it is. Probably local counties or something. And some traditional costumes, perhaps dancing is in store. Nice building. Like it was supposed to be an important intersection. Maybe it was at one time, but doesn't seem so anymore. Here's a large palace-like building. It's now the Cultural Palace, Astra. I'm standing here in Sighetu Marmației. Is that on a Sunday morning at about 9 o'clock, next to the hospital, which is what this building is here, is I'm waiting to get a ride to Sapanta. And apparently you can stick your thumb out and maybe you'll get a ride. It's popular enough that it's on the internet. Yesterday, how do they know I want to go there? They said they'll know. The reason is you can't get any information on transportation for Sunday because apparently there isn't any. I assume trains must still be running through here, but as to anything else, apparently there are no buses, no mini taxis, but there are taxis, so that's another option I have as a backup. And driving away there picked me up moments after I made my last recording. I think I spent less than 5 minutes with my thumb out, and immediately pulled over and drove me here to Sapanta. We had a little bit of a conversation. He doesn't speak any English and I don't speak any Romanian, but we managed to get some information between us. He has a daughter living in Spain, and we talked about churches and other kinds of things. Offered him 7 lei and he just pulled 5 out of the pack and said, no, that's enough, that's all I need, compared to a taxi driver who would have taken that and anything else he could get his hands on. This is part of the monument to the victims of communism and the resistance. There's a site, actually it's a building, and so it's probably a museum in a town that has this, but I also saw something on the side of the road that seemed to indicate there was something there also. Here, a close-up view we get of a currently used old building of wood, and you can see these look like slabs, but they were cut with a saw, I'm pretty confident, and then some filigree work on that trim. So you see that tower there, that's of a new church being built with a controversial stone base. Why it's controversial, I don't know. I also notice on this bus it says Jan, and there's apparently a additional bus stop or station in the town Marmației, and that may be it. And then here's a sign suggesting the cemetery here is to the right. Apparently there's a competition involved here. This is going to be the highest wooden steepled church, I think. This is known as the Happy Cemetery here in Sapanta because of these beautifully painted tombstones. And apparently everything over on this side and maybe a little bit to the right was by one man, and then the balance over on that side is by another man. So we'll just kind of wander through this and then come back and look at detail. We will just do a mix. I think that maybe these represent the trades of the person or what they were known for. For example, maybe this person was a keeper of fruit trees or even a sprayer of trees. That man may be a carpenter of children's furniture, and maybe a military person. You get the idea. And there a huge pile of wreaths on top of a new grave, perhaps. I'll let you deduce what these were for. It's interesting to imagine that a man spent his lifetime memorializing these people and himself. But it's quite an achievement, I think. Shows not only his skill, but a love of community, a love of respect, if you will, for passing of human beings into, as they would say, the next life. Some of these are quite old and weathered, while others look new and refreshed. So, and this grave site looks new. So I don't know what that means. The music of these churches seems so beautiful, literally, and sometimes the voices are absolutely. Britain has talent level. Unlike the monotonous droning of the Catholic Mass. It's interesting to imagine the gravestones of the people we know today in our world, what they would be, or what they will be if someone continues this work in the future. Was she known as a very pious woman? And here a milkmaid, no longer a maid, perhaps a student. Again, the wool trade, woman for her cooking skills. This man for fooling around with sheep. Now, here are two apparently very old ones. The script, of course, no longer visible, except very indistinctly. So what does this remaining chunk of a tree symbolize? Did it come from his land or her land? Is it something she sat on most of her life outside of her house? Who knows? But at least here, as I have commented before, there is some slightly deeper understanding of who these people were. This man, a person who cuts grain with a scythe and either does it in hot weather or drinks a lot while he's doing it, don't know. And what is the significance, if any, of the detail, or is it just pretty detail that's designed to do what it does, and that's add drama and outline different sections?
Pe acesta văzându-l zăcând și știa Iisus, voiești să te faci sănătos, răspunsa lui bolnavul, Doamne.
A woman who worked the fields on behalf of her children, and a woman who took care of her family. Here too, shifting over in time. One, the man who works with trees, I think, somehow. It could have been quite precise. The tool would have told us, if I knew about it, precisely what it is he does, including that design of a tree. Here a woman and her cow, again perhaps a milkmaid, and with his horses. You can see what a monumental effort this must have been. I don't know how long it took to crank out each of these. As I get closer to the church, I'll get tighter on those graphics behind the scaffolding. Here, a carver of stone. Is it possible that he could have made gravestones? If so, what an irony. Here, the hunter in his fields. Is it possible this holds the grave of two people? And why? Here it looks like a flautist of some sort. This appears to be Bob Hope picking apples in his orchard. And this one rather large in size, although there are others equally as tall. This man probably a builder of these wooden houses that we see with that precise coping at the corners of that building. And here a man who no doubt ran a meat market of some sort, smoked his pipe. This is probably the way he looked in real life, if somehow this artist knew him or knew of him. Interesting in these two old weathered ones, how on the left only the yellow remains very distinct as a color, with a few little smatterings of blue. These in a better state, but not the brilliant state of so many. Is there a process of automatic restoration in this cemetery, or is it the product of loyal families? Here perhaps a chemist or a pharmacist, which at its time may have been one and the same. A lady with her cow. Notice the yellow paint and the white doves above. Doves are a element of probably many forms of art, but Renaissance art. The dove had a particular role, religious significance in painting. Here, unfortunately falling apart, while the next one somewhat restored, at least at the top. And there a soldier. What war was that? And could his uniform tell an historian the answer? Are two sisters buried here, or were they just always known as those two women, regardless of who it actually is buried here? This appears to illustrate that she died in 1998 in a car accident. So somebody keeps doing this work. Perhaps a scholar, a professor, or a teacher.
Ștefan și Ioana, Ilie, Ștefanae, Maria Clara, preotul Vasile, preoteasa Marie, Vasile Lavine, Alavine Andrei.
Now these three are interesting because I'm going to walk around and you'll see that they're carved on both sides.
Gheorghe și Maria, Alexandra, Teodor, Floare, Mariana, Daniela, Gheorghe, Alin, Gheorghe, Dan, Florian.
And here a man who was a carpenter of some sort working with machines in today's world, and also a carving on the back showing a man driving a vehicle. Are these one and the same? Died 1990. Maybe these double-sided gravestones are the precursors of what I imagine will be the future, when some kind of chip will be embedded in a tombstone and my iPod with my earbuds plugged in to my ears will rattle off as long as I want to hear the story of the person. This may be a vintner, although I don't know what's inside those boxes, one of which the drawer is open up. Here the couple toasting, but notice here a group of soldiers, or what appear to be soldiers. And the date here is 1915. So this is a memorial to a man who died in the First World War, and perhaps his comrade. And here the date of 1954 on the other side of his panel, perhaps showing when he was born and how he lived. And this is obviously a couple. The man on the left there is the same who's in that military group of 3 or 4 men. It's interesting how they tell the history of the era of these people, with that car, of course. Here a man's respect for the USSR, and there always seem to be those who want to tower above the others even when dead. This is a much bigger monument on a much larger pedestal. And here's just a simple cement one. Why did he eschew, or his heirs eschew, this traditional approach? Now the redundancy is starting to overwhelm me, so I'll start being more specific in what I find that's unique. I do wonder what the multiplicity of people in a single monument suggests. And notice this woman with probably a metal stove from around the early part of the 20th century. This man perhaps a preacher? If it's not too cynical, I think a quick perusal of these gives you an idea of the station in life. Here the backside of a grave. Is that a picture that hung on the wall of her home? Made out of diagonally placed slats. And from here we can pan up and take a closer look at these panels. Notice how they allude in their general idea to the old monasteries that we've seen recently. And even higher up, even smaller panels that we'll come back in a moment and look. Yep. Are these examples or copies of what we've seen? Or are they meant to represent the most common forms of life. Here a man with a chainsaw, and a man who fashioned those bowls and other things with hand tools. Here perhaps a different kind of loom, television repairman. I'm serious. Here the cartoon work looks rather simple, less sophisticated than some of the others we've seen. This one I can't decipher. Was that a young baby? 1951. I realize that was redundant, but I can't see two dates on this one. A set of 4 bells that will return to the top of this church when it's completed. Some of these look very, very similar, almost reproductions without going back of ones we've already seen. And I wonder if, in fact, more recent generations do exactly. And this lady, probably a baker. And this man, perhaps a woodsman. You wonder, and I have to check the date on this tombstone, whether those costumes are old costumes. Yeah, see, 2008, so that's not that long ago. Were the use of old costumes in these paintings merely a historical illusion, or did they really wear these things this recently? Is this a nurse or a teacher? I can't tell. I don't know if that insignia would tell me. If I were in the culture, it probably would. Another butcher. And do these pictures, designs, if you will, become stylized icons representing professions? For example, is this a teacher, a lawyer, a scholar? Here's the man who lays up these bricks for these homes and buildings. Definitely a grade school teacher. Does this indicate the man had no legs? Or that it was a young boy with his feet tucked underneath him? Is that a toy or a legitimate motor? Here are 2 men with implements on a table between them. I don't know if we can get in closer and tell what those are. Or maybe a game of some sort. In fact, that's probably what it is. It's a game board. And the round things are the chips. Chinese checkers, I think it is, I see them saying, or mahjong, or... Here a man, probably known as part of this instrumental group. This may have been this lady's home. Is that a picture of her husband or son, perhaps? Here a family, perhaps torn asunder by this death. And here a new grave site. Special moment in this man's life. Here an old wooden building, or what looks to be an old wooden building. Certainly the style is of the old type that we've seen in the museums, with the heavy, heavy beams forming the foundation, if you will. Usually in the old days stuck on rocks, of course, up in the mountains. And look at how her feet go at 90 degrees to her frontal, like the Egyptians did. If I stand close to this, I can't tell that I run my hand down here. This feels like it's done by hand with an adze, or however you pronounce that. Not done by a saw, although this, no, can't be convinced that there's a saw, and I can't see any saw marks in it, which is perhaps even more telling. And here we see more what may be chop marks as they began to flesh out the flatten it. Notice how they attempted to join these. This probably done with a saw, but I can't be sure. These are all way at the back on the left-hand side, representing new ones, I suspect. teacher in a very bright setting. These are all relatively new but represent the same kind of crafts that we've seen throughout this little sojourn. Here, with some pride, they announced the water closet or toilets are free, no taxes. And you can see we've got quite a bit of room to go, so 100 years or more after I'm gone, they'll still be putting them in the ground here. And there are the 4 towers that will go on the top of this church when done. Certainly this man a miner, but a modern day miner with his cap. Here, a truck driver. Carves are pretty, aren't they? This site represents that of 2 men at least, if not 2 families. Walk up and start on the right side. We've done the left side and come back to where I am here on this left side. This is interesting on the back side of one of the graves. What it symbolizes, I don't know. We started over on the left side and did the entire left side. Now I'm going to do the right side. Mainly what I'm looking for now is to see if I can detect any differences or find anything unique over here. And this section goes back as far as we were on the left section, excepting the break for the church. Here a man dragging those logs out of the woods. Here with a powered wood mill saw.
Ca iubitorul de oameni, duhovnicesc cu său jertfelnic într-un miros de bună mire.
Notice how similar this is to one we saw just a few moments ago over on the left side. Does this show a woman faithfully preparing her husband's lunchbox? Is this a priest?
Milă și iertare de păcatele, de greșalele noastre, la Domnul, pace lumii la Domnul.
Here a woman using that device that holds the rough yarn, I believe. It's in the lower right. And is this a Singer sewing machine? I think so. I think the different scenes of woodcutters and lumbermen shows how important that industry is to this area and probably much of Romania. And here with the foods on the stove she was so well known for making so well. The epitome of piety.